Hello Guardians, hope you are doing great. And in this video, we're going to discuss about the measuring unit of CSS in a website. Without further ado, let's get started. But before that, let's roll the intro. Modern web development has more than a dozen of different units of measurement. Choosing one of them to use in a situation can be confusing, especially with the introduction of responsive web design. Making a wrong choice when using CSS units can really mess your whole web structure and make that even harder to maintain. Currently there are 15 supported CSS units, and we can separate these units on absolute and relative terms. First, let's understand what is absolute and relative. Absolute are the things or units which are universally equal in any scenario, or you can say they are static, fixed in simple words. Relative are the things or units which are based on their parent dimension or the viewport, or you can say they are related to someone who is their superior. These are the units which are absolute and relative. Absolute has pixels, inches, centimeter, millimeter, quarter millimeter, points and picas, whereas relative has percentage, font size just like M and RAM, character sizes just like EX and CH, viewport dimensions VW and VH, also known as viewport width and viewport height, viewport max, Vmax, and last but not the least, viewport min, also known as Vmin. First, let's just talk about relative units. Relative units depend on the size of user screen. The more room you will provide, the more stretch or shrink they will. First, let's take percentage. If you give an element a width of 50%, that will be exactly the half of the screen. And we adjust the screen size from lower to higher, the element will adjust itself at equal proportion. Let me show with an example. Here I have a basic HTML structure with its browser preview. First, add a div with the class of container, and also add a h1 tag, and let's name this Hello Guardians. Also add in-page CSS and make some changes on the containers class. First, we give it a width of 50%, which is exactly the half of the screen, and give it a background color so we can see what changes are going on. And let's save this and hit refresh. As you can see, it is exactly the equal to the half of the screen, and whenever you make the change in the screen size or the window size, it will adapt, because the container is a child of the body, and whenever the changes as done in the body tag, it will impact on the container. Font sizes M and RAM. First thing first, M stands for simple M and RAM stands for root M. M is dependent on its parent element, while RAM is dependent on the root element of the web page. And the default structure of every web page is same, whether it is mobile, tablet or PC. RAM will be same for all. The difference between RAM and M is that RAM is not cascade. Both M and RAM are heavily used for the font sizes, especially for grid and responsive design in general. Let me show you with an example. First, let's add a div with a class of container. Also make some chat classes. Add a text. As you can see, we have 3 different divs with the same class, and now let's style them. First, make changes on the container class. Give it a padding of 15 px, font size 16 px. Now make changes on the example. Give it a background color. Make it a little bit transparent. Width 5 em, height 2 em, font size 2 em. In this case, the default font size of the container is 16 px, that is equals to 1 em, and the child beneath them will be the twice of that font size, that is twice of this. And save this and hit refresh. As you can see, the first class, that is the example hello1, the font size of this class will be the twice of its parent, that is the font size of the container is 16px. The font size of hello1 will be the twice of 16px, that is 32px, and the font size of 32px will be the twice of its parent size, and the parent of h2 is h1. hello1 is 32px, and the font size second class, the hello2, will be the 64px. As you can see, hello1 is 32px, the hello2 will be 64px, and this will go on. Now let's talk about RAM, and we are taking the same example, and first of all let's convert them into RAM. Save this and hit refresh. As you can see, in this the height, width and the font size of every element is same, it does not change. This is because of the RAM, and the RAM is dependent on the root elements of the browser. Root element of every browser is dependent on the HTML, so it does not affect whether you any changes on the font size or anything else. If you're using RAM, all of the things will be static, and it does not change whether the size of the screen or anything else change. Character sizes EX and CH, and instead of focusing on the complete text like M and RAM, it focuses on the character. EX, or you can say X, it represents the height of the character of the font family you have used, and CH, it depends on a specific character dimensions but with the width of 0 element. In short, it's useless. But the X is used as a ruler because it has no ascendants and descendants. It's boxy. Viewport. Viewport is the user's visible area of a web page. It varies on the device's width, just like mobile, tablet or PC. Basically, viewport is the internet source. Viewport width and viewport height, also known as VW and VH. As we know that viewport is a device visible area of a web page, and viewport works almost same as the percentage but in a slightly different manner. It varies on the viewport. Like if a width of 50 VW and a height of 50 VH, it will be exactly equal to the half of the browser width and height. Let me show you with an example. First, let's add a simple div with the class of container. Add a h1 and a simple text over here. Now let's style this. Give it a background color. Width 50 VW, height 50 VH, and also make some changes on the H1. Save this and hit refresh. As you can see, it is exactly the half of the screen. As the height and width of the viewport changes, it will automatically adapt itself. Viewport min and viewport max, also known as vmin and vmax. This unit uses the browser's viewport dimensions that is at any given time, the larger or smaller in size. You have to make some breakpoints in your code, and your website works in these breakpoints whenever the changes the size of the screen. Now let's talk about absolute units. Frankly speaking, absolute units are very useful and very common for everyone in every program. But you're not going to have a good time using them in today's web development. These all have standard, or you can say they all are fixed in size or measurement. They all are good for printing, but most of them are not useful anymore except pixels. They all have their own use, they all are unique in their own way. Let's get to know them anyways. First, let's take pixels. Pixels are the smallest unit of measurement of web development. Pixels are tiny dots that make up display on computer screen, tablet and mobiles. Everything that shows on a computer screen is displayed in pixels. In other words, you can say pixels are fairly standard from one computer to another. The whole World Wide Web works in pixels, everything renders in pixels, and JavaScript dreams in pixels. But along with all of its popularity, it also has its own drawbacks. Just like Internet Explorer users cannot research text that are set in pixels, inches, centimeters, and millimeter. Not much else to say here, they represent a real physical measure value that we all use in our daily life. PT or points. It is a typographic term, we usually see it in Photoshop in typography panel. It is also a physical measure value and it measures exactly 1/72 of an inch. PC or picas. Another typography term represents 12 points or 1/6 of an inch. This unit might be used for printed size sheets. Now let's see which one should we use in web development, and I want to tell you it totally depends on the design and your taste of preference that you want to use in your design. Things measured in characters should be large block of text, since the human eye finds them easier to read when they are 60 characters wide. Also, first character indentation should be considered in terms of ems and rems, since font size will probably change depending on the device. I personally use pixels a lot of time when I test something new stuff, but in professionally I always use ems and rems. The reason for using ems for text elements is so that they can cascade relative to the module, and rems for the rest of the website. Now that you all are aware of different sizing options and where to use them, your next project can be much more flexible and modular. Always have in mind the scope of possible devices on which your website should render and how that relates to units being used in different sessions of your CSS architecture. There is no best solution, so always experiment and find something that suits you best and keep creating. So that's it for today guys. If you want to connect with us, then follow us on Facebook, and if you find anything helpful or you have learned anything, then do drop a like and share. That really helps us to bring more videos to you guys, and subscribe to our channel for more such updates.